Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, November 19th, 2009. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Brewing with the Sun, we talk to Joe Bair of Princeton Homebrew in Trenton, New Jersey, about his groundbreaking methods of going solar in brewing beer. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter, my username, Basic Brewing, all one word. You can find us on Facebook, too. I'm at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page is on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. And fans of the show from that page get notices, updates whenever new episodes are posted. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our Basic Brewing site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first, especially when you're holiday shopping. Ho, ho, ho. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we appreciate your support greatly. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. Continuing the shameless plugging, our 2010 Brewers Logbooks are going out the door. Don't get caught at the beginning of next year without one. I got a note from Mike out in San Carlos, California, and Mike says, just ordered my 2010 Brewers Logbook. Thanks, Mike. And just thought you'd like to know that it also comes in real handy for making my fermented foods, sauerkraut, pickles, and such. I use the fermenting techniques instead of cooking, and the logbook is real handy for the time frame and recipes. Very cool. Also, I'm sending out our new Reinheitsgebot is a four-letter word T-shirts to brewers around the world. Green is more popular so far than yellow. And in answer to last week's question about which four-letter word the shirt refers to, Mark Smith, who you heard on the show last week, says the four-letter word is beer. Duh. Of course. So, whether you go along with the principles of the Reinheitsgebot or not, the shirt works both ways. How about that for riding the fence? Standing squarely on the top of the fence. I got a note from Adam Ross, who's one of the brewers who took part in the BYO-BBR collaborative yeast pitching rate experiment from last week. You might remember that Adam got gravity readings that were sort of backwards from what we expected. The lesser pitched beer attenuated more than the ones with more yeast. And we postulated that there may be some bugs working in the lesser pitched beer because of the longer lag time. Adam says, I listened to the most recent episode of Basic Brewing Radio where you read my results from the BBR-BYO pitching rate experiment. It confirmed my suspicion that my results weren't normal. I'm confident I took accurate gravity readings since I first used a refractometer and then used a hydrometer when the numbers weren't what I expected. So, in other words, he double-checked. Adam says, I'm not ready to blame the numbers on an infection. I've been brewing for over 2 years now, and I've had 2 infected batches, both of which happened early on in the same plastic fermentation bucket, which I have since thrown out. I'm confident enough in my sanitization process that I think something else was going on in this experiment. I think the high attenuation occurred from a mixture of over-aerating the wort and fermenting warmer than I should have. I've since dialed back how much I aerate and am now temp controlling my beers. I kept the 3 clear bottle samples I used in the experiment to check in on their progress, and the underpitched sample finally cleared a bit. The underpitched beer has improved enough that it had saved itself from the drain. This makes me think that maybe it hadn't finished fermenting entirely when I took the readings. Is it possible that I got a higher gravity reading on the overpitched beer because it had more suspended yeast particles than the other? Good question. It'd be interesting to see if the gravity readings change once the yeast flocculates out. And by the way, I don't think we meant to question your brewing techniques, Adam. Just thinking of the possibilities of what may have caused the reading. So I hope you didn't take offense. Thanks again for taking part. I hope you take part in the next one as well. I asked on a previous show whether anyone had used a product called Stearamine as a sanitizer in beer. I got a reply from Jim Llewellyn, who you've heard on this show before. He is a BBR alumnus. Jim says, a fellow brew buddy of mine, Darren, he says, recall our dry hop and yeast APA experiment podcast, has been using Stearamine for at least a year without a contamination issue to date. It's a great value, Jim says, at $5 per 150 tablets. It's very easy to use and doesn't stain like iodophor. Stearamine is a heat-stable, 200 degrees Fahrenheit plus, quaternary ammonium compound, and they are used in a ton of products, for example, surfactants, detergents, etc. With the substitution of a long-chain alkyl functional group, these become strong antimicrobials and kill a wide range of bacteria and viruses by disrupting/lysing their membranes and proteins. Think of their membranes as chainmail, and if something is small enough, has the correct shape, or strong enough, it can pass through and or break the chainmail. Jim says, because it's primarily used in food sanitization, I would have to think that there has been a ton of research done by the FDA to make sure it's not only effective but safe when used as directed. And then Jim concludes, in homebrewing, there's been some debate on whether or not it coats glassware, preventing the foam from lacing the glass, and whether or not it inhibits head retention in beer itself. I think these are valid given the mechanism by which it acts as an antimicrobial, but I have not seen this as an obvious issue. Well, thanks, Jim. Good information. I appreciate your taking time to clue me in and clue us all in as well. Okay, let's get on to the interview. I'm always thankful to everybody who emails links to good stories and possible show topics. And this week I want to thank Steve Cannon, who was the first to send me the link to the story about Joe Bair's experiments with solar brewing. Well, Joe Bair, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Glad to be here.
First of all, introduce yourself. Who are you, and how long have you been into brewing, and talk a bit about your store.
Okay. I was in the Navy in 1983 in Reagan's 400-ship Navy, and at the time, there wasn't much to do besides do figure eights off the coast of San Diego. And when we'd come in after 2 weeks being out there, we went around and to like Grateful Dead concerts, whatever, and we met some people that had Grateful Dead tapes. And they lived at the top of Mount Palomar. And we went up there, and they also homebrewed. So we went up there, because back then it wasn't like it is now where you can download anything. You had to know somebody to get tapes. We went up there and had a good time and drank all of their beer, and after a while we figured we should be making our own. So we bought a cheap kit and made all the errors you could ever imagine, including pouring the hot wort on a shag carpet and melting the carpet underneath. It looked like a crop circle in a rented place. It was a lot of... but sooner or later, we got better and better at it. The friend that I was doing it with, Mark Burford, later went on to start Blue Point Brewing Company. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're in Blue Point, Long Island. And I started a homebrew store in Princeton, New Jersey in 95. In 2004, I moved down to Trenton, and I bought my own building, which is a 5,000 square foot building. And I was all set to open and got flooded, and then fixed it all up, and 14 months later got flooded again. So it was 4 years before I opened again. When I opened, I had all my old customers came back, and everything's been working out great since then. But in the meantime, nobody had really addressed solar home brewing, and I figured that the technology somewhere was out there. I just had to figure out what instruments to use. It had to be different than heating hot water. It had to be really boiling the wort, because they do that before, but they've been heating solar hot water for a long time, but they haven't been brewing beer directly with it. And that was where I wanted to make the difference. Now, the problem with using the different methods is that you had to bring it up to boiling. And in bringing it up to boiling, you had to harness a lot of the energy of the sun. And that was the way that I figured I could do it was with the Fresnel lenses, which are just like large magnifying glasses from the Lighthouse technology that was glass, and they put it on acrylic. The lens would get everything. You could get some massive temperatures out of those things, but the problem was it was pinpointed, and that was if you pinpoint it, it almost instantly boils at the surface, and if you do that, it gets hot at that particular point. But in the same way, it doesn't stay hot because it's just like if you turned your oven on and left the door open. You could cook whatever inside, but it would take a heck of a long time because you're not doing the right thing, but you have to close the door. So the light would go through glass. So I found one of those old convenience store refrigerators, and I put black painted Cornelius tank, a 10-gallon Cornelius tank with the metal handles on it, and I put it in there, and that brought the heat up, and it kept the heat in the inside there. And that was when I did that, I realized that was the two parts of the technology that I needed to brew beer.
Now let's talk about the Fresnel lens, because if you don't know what a Fresnel lens is, it basically takes the fat out of the lens and uses concentric circles, sort of. If you think about one of those flat plastic magnifying glasses that you put on a book, and it magnifies the book, even though it's a flat piece of plastic. And you think of a lighthouse and those lenses with the concentric circles. You maintain the curvature of the lens, but you just take all the fat out of it, the middle part of the glass. So what you have are these huge flat pieces of plastic. And I have to acknowledge, before I forget, that Steve Cannon from the San Jose area was the listener who emailed me the link to the article and the video about you that was on the Philly beer scene page. And the two guys on beer, David Motorana is the guy who posted it, and I'll put a link on our site to that article and to the video. It's pretty cool. They did a good job. But anyway, you can see that these are huge pieces of lens. Where did you get these things?
They come from the inside of rear projection TV sets. You can find them on the side of the road now, especially because everybody's going to the flat screen, high definition.
Right.
If there's two different kinds of lenses. Back in the day, when you'd go into a bar or something like that and you're looking at a football game on one of these things, it would seem something where you'd ask the people, like, how much you pay for this? Because it really wasn't a good picture, especially if somebody opened a door or something. And they found out that the circles that were around them weren't particularly spaced right, so they re-engineered them, and so you have two different varieties of lenses that are out there. One that are called linear lens, which has a 4-inch wide by half-inch beam, and spot lenses, which are like a half-inch beam that's really hot. So you have either the heat spread out and less hot, or the heat that's pinpointed and very hot. I found that the linear lenses, or the lens that are spread out, are better to brew beer with than the spot lens. It's more efficient.
How do you tell the difference?
I guess you hold it up to a light, and then you look at what the focal point is. The focal point on these are somewhere between 25 and 32 inches on almost all of them. So usually you can do the burn test where if you set it up and put a piece of wood, you will find out where that focal is. It's like an imaginary ball away from it, very small, but it's super hot at that point. In front of it, it's not that hot, and behind it's not that hot. And it's very important when you're solar brewing that you understand the physics that are involved and the optics that are involved in getting that particular point as hot as possible by getting the focal point correct.
And it's kind of like when you were a kid getting a magnifying glass out in the sun and burning leaves. You have to focus the beam of the sun in that very small point, and once it gets there, the leaves start, bursting into flame, basically, which makes it kind of dangerous if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
I've walked in front of the beam before. It can burn. If you stayed there long enough, it would boil the skin. Right. It would be hot enough, but usually there's other dangers that are too, and that is that it's extremely bright. It's like looking at the sun. Whatever your target is, when it hits it, you should have, at the minimum, sunglasses on, sometimes welding goggles, because if you don't, you'll look at that and then you'll look away and you'll be temporarily blinded. It's that bright.
If you're lucky, it's temporary. I guess if you shone it on a piece of reflective metal and looked at it too long, it's exactly like looking into the sun.
Yes, it's concentrated bright white light, and that is what is the energy in the whole thing. So the brighter and more concentrated it is, the more energy you have. When I went to the South Philadelphia tap room and had the tasting, there were some people that were trying it, and they were using Fresnel lenses that were big, but not big enough. The more light that you can collect, the hotter it's going to be. So I would say for bringing 5 gallons or 6.5 gallons of wort to a boil, I would say the minimum would be 1 square meter, which would be equivalent to about 1,200 watts of power. I don't know if I'm getting too technical on you here or not.
No, go for it.
But the amount of sunlight that you can collect is directly proportional to how much heat you're going to have in BTUs. The BTUs would be 1 pound of water, 1 degree in 1 minute at sea level, at international standard atmosphere. That's what most hot water heaters and boilers and air conditioners are rated at. And that is, so if you start off with warmer water, you need less BTUs to do it. On a real good day, and it works best because the Earth is tilted at 15 degrees, and we're here in New Jersey, the latitude is 40. So in the summertime, you're looking at 55 degrees is what the tilt would be on the Earth. And in the wintertime, when the sun is lower on the horizon, it would be 40 degrees minus 15 or 25 degrees. It works better when the sun is on the horizon than it does when the sun is directly overhead for a lot of reasons, but basically the one that would be for home brewers is that if the sun is directly overhead, that means that your target or your keg or whatever has to be horizontal, and that means that whatever liquid's inside won't be up against where the sun is hitting it. And that's a technological thing you have to overcome.
Yeah, you've got to be hitting the fluid on the other side of the metal there.
You want, yeah, and if the thing's tilted, then the fluid is not up against the wall of your brew kettle.
And this is a painted corny keg. I mean, in the article,
Yeah.
one thing they said is you have to get a black kettle because the paint will burn off. But this is actually a painted black corny keg.
It's flat black barbecue paint, matte black, and that's what you want. It's flat black. The reason why they said the keg, Dave, when he was there was a lot going on in the morning, and I was trying to explain to him that the Cornelius kegs mainly come with rubber handles on the top that are glued down on top of the Cornelius keg, and that when you use the Fresnel lens, it gets it so hot that it melts the glue, because those things aren't made to boil water in, and it melts the glue on top, so that when you go to pick the thing up, the rubber handles pop right off it, and then you're in a world of hurt because you have a boiling thing with no way of picking it up. So they have the brand new ones that they sell, and the old ones that are out there with metal handles are the ones that you want.
So do you do all grain, or is it just extract?
I do all grain and extract. We did all grain with the way that the interview for that turned out was the week before they were supposed to come, and the weather was clear skies, and we had two other people that were here to help, and they, for whatever reason, they couldn't make it. So we went ahead and did all grain, and everything turned out great. The week after, when they came, the sun in the morning was real cloudy, and when you're doing solar brewing, whether you're doing it for the first time on, getting interviewed and videoed on the whole thing, or you're just doing it regularly, the sun can let you down. If the sun doesn't shine, the whole thing's pretty much bunk. You're helpless you have to, bring out the propane or something. It's not going to work. So that morning, the sun just wasn't shining. There was a lot of clouds, and we decided to do an extract batch that day instead of an all grain because of the fact that if everybody came for it and we had the whole thing set up and the sun let us down, we would have less chance of making the whole day worthless without.
No.
So when you do it all grain, and what we did the week before, what basically happens is the corny tank, use a 10-gallon corny tank, and the corny tank actually is like a pseudo decoction on the whole thing. Because like I said before, once the Fresnel lens hits the corny tank, the other side of the whole thing boils really quickly, almost instantly. It's really hot. And that creates melanoidins from the Maillard reaction, and it brings the temperature up. Instead of taking it out and decocting it under a flame and adding it in, it brings it up, the temperature up from 120, which what we started off with, to saccharification, 148 to 158.
Now, you've also got a hose system on the roof of your shop where you have a black hose on top of your black tar roof, and you use that to help with the heating of your shop during the wintertime. Do you also use that in the brewing process?
Yeah, that's what it is. Remember I was telling you before about the BTUs. You have, for every BTU, you're bringing up, 1 pound of water, 1 degree. That, if you start off with a higher BTUs to begin with, then your time is short. So if the sun is on, rising in the morning and hits the black, and black absorbs the heat, I've gotten 150 degrees off the black hose on the roof.
Wow.
And it is measured out so that I have 6.5 gallons of water coming through that. So it's perfect to jumpstart the brewing process. The problem is you can't use a black hose for brewing water because of the impurities, the hose flavor, and all the rest of that. So it has to go from that into a regular immersion wort chiller and then heat the water that's in there. and that will give you and there's temperature losses whenever you're doing that.
Sure.
So I have about 15 degrees or so.
So you use it as a kind of a reverse chiller. You as the same reason you don't use the chiller water that's going through the immersion chiller in the beer. You don't use the water that's been through the hoses as the actual brew water.
Of course.
Now, take us through a brew day with your solar system. You not only use it to heat your water and to heat your wort, you also use the rays of the sun to roast grain and hops. Right.
The hops is it really raises eyebrows. It's the hops. If you even look at a pellet hop, and think of it like a cigarette, which it burns exactly like a cigarette. It smolders. It once it heats up, it just keeps smoking, because the relationship of the family of hops is in the same as cannabis. The smell is unmistakably the same. So it smells like you're at a Grateful Dead concert when you're heating them up.
So you've gone full circle with your...
Yeah. It's an eye opener. To tell you the truth, it smells really good, but that may just be my opinion. And what it does, though, is there's various focal points of the Fresnel lens. If you heat the hops, and there's a whole bunch of things going on besides just heating the hops, which I don't know if we have time to get into, because you can also get real superior hop utilization with the Fresnel lens and the Corny tanks, because of the pressurized factor that you're boiling at a much higher temperature than 212 under pressure. So there's more than one factor that's going on here. But what happens with the Fresnel lens and the hops is it basically there's all these different known hop oils that come out at all different temperatures. And as you know from the hop utilization charts, at best you're getting 30% hop utilization, which means you're leaving behind 70% of the oils and hops, which at the time of the hop crisis, that would be real good information. But now the hops are back down in price, so it's not that important as it seemed at the time. But you can get the Fresnel lens does is it takes those oils and pre-isomerizes them. It heats them up so that the oil sacs burst, and then when you put them in hot water, you get a much better hop utilization, if you can avoid not burning them. But if you burn them, enjoy the smell.
So what kind of flavors do you get from roasted hops? Other than the increased hop utilization, what kind of flavors do you get?
Interesting question. I haven't really put my finger on it. The best way I can describe it is it takes most hops and gives that spiciness that you find in European varieties, noble hops. It enhances that. Even when you're using American hops, it kind of changes the oil complexion to give you a more spicy flavor.
Huh.
It also it tends to slightly darken the beer because of the ash that's involved in the whole thing, and not the same way that you would see darkening of the beer from, say, the dark malts, but it does affect the color.
So do you have to tailor your recipe or change your recipes for a solar brew over just a typical brew day?
You have to use less hops because you don't need as many hops because of what I just said. You also if you're trying to keep the color down, you have to be real careful on the amount that you roast the hops and roast the grain, because regularly grain is kilned with hot air, and not. I guess originally the patent for black patent was that they had a 55-gallon drum with a fire underneath it and somebody turning it. It was stolen from coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing with the grain with the solar is not. I mean, it'll catch on fire real instantly if you put it in the focal area, but you kind of just put it out of focus a bit, and it just heats it up, and you can get different colors. If you had some way of turning the stuff, you could get a real even roast, but it really doesn't matter, because in the end, all of the grains are milled together. So if you took crystal malt and put it in a jar and put roasted malt in the jar and shook it up, you would get pretty much the same color looking. If you took if you look at the video of my stuff and cook it, it's some are burnt, some are regular. It's uneven, and that will affect the color and the flavor. The flavor would be a roasted, toasted taste, reminiscent of burnt toast, which gives an exciting flavor in the beer.
So do you get more wort caramelization because of the way that you're focusing all the heat on just that one small area, or have you noticed anything?
Well, you can actually tell. You just look inside the corny tank when you're cleaning it, and you can see on the other side of the thing the burn marks. So you are, yes, of course, you're getting caramelization. Now
we haven't talked about how you use this mirror or the lens. You don't just stand there with the lens. You've built a contraption to enable you to focus the lens and sort of a frame with a pivot on it. So I would imagine, like for instance, when I bring my wort up to boil with a propane heater, I've got to really monitor the level of the flame as I'm coming up to boil, or I get a boil over. So I would imagine, can you regulate the heat of the sun as in that critical point of boiling?
Well, interesting question. All of the mechanics of the boil over disappear in brewing with the corny tanks, because the boil over is no place to go. It's just going to boil up and go back. There is a problem with DMS because you have to vent that some way.
Huh.
But all of the stirring and watching for regular propane is replaced. You don't have to do that. What it's replaced with is you're moving the Fresnel lens and your convenience store refrigerator, the Target, and all with the sun, which is, it's busy work. But that's now to vent it, the pressure builds up in the inside. I told you I would talk about this in a bit. The pressure builds up inside those corny tanks. They're rated to 130 psi, which everybody knows from serving beer out of corny tanks and forced carbonization that it's real hard to get past 40 psi in there. I mean, they are really well-made, solid chambers that hold pressure. When you're using solar power inside a corny tank, there's a new ball game that you're playing in, and that is the pressure ball game. Regular beer, I guess you've been up to, I don't know if you've been up there. There's a lot of the new breweries that have pressurized system where they boil the beer under pressure. So like a regular pressure cooker at 15 psi boils at 250 degrees. That makes it so that all of the stuff that normally that 212 degree barrier cooking it at atmosphere There's a whole bunch of new ball games that come into play. I haven't like put a camera in the inside to see exactly what it looks like, but I'm sure it's pretty violent.
Now, do you boil with the lid on?
I boil with the lid on, and
really?
And then you vent it, so you have all the pressure that's in there, and then you vent it out by just pushing on the gas on the whole thing, and it comes out at super hot, superheated steam.
So how do you vent it?
You use the Cornelius tank poppet valve on the gas side,
and it just automatically comes out. Just for safety.
It purges everything that's in there. Yeah, it's under pressure.
So do you vent it periodically, or just for safety's sake? I want to make sure that if people try this at home that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, you don't really vent it periodically, because every time you open the door of the thing, you're losing heat. It's like opening the door of the oven.
Right.
But you are, in the brewing process, you are required to do some things like hop additions and things like that, where you're going to open it up, and at that time you can't open it up with all the pressure in there. Of course, like you can't open up a corny tank with all the pressure in there, so you have to vent it. You wear gloves and stand away from it, you know.
So how do you monitor what's going on inside the corny keg?
If you look at the video, I took one of those like brew kettle temperature things, and I had a plastic Cornelius lid, and I drilled very tight tolerance through there, and I put the probe for the temperature through that, so that I could see the temperature and monitor the temperature while I was brewing.
So what kinds of pressures get in there? Do you know how much pressure is building up?
I don't. I'm planning on doing a thermal well with a pressure and temperature, because they're both related, so I can remotely monitor the whole thing. That's what I'm working on right now.
So you're really on the cutting edge of this whole thing. I mean, you're making this up as you go along, pretty much.
Yeah, everything. Every time you do something, it poses a whole bunch of more new questions on the whole thing, and trying to figure out. There's so many things at play when you're doing this, that it's sometimes it's confusing to me, just to look at the things and say, am I seeing what's really going on here, or am I making the wrong conclusions?
So one question that I ask people who are kind of on the cutting edge of doing new techniques is why? I mean, what are there advantages to brewing in this way, or why do you want to go out of the box, so to speak, and try this new technique?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. Mainly the CO2 emissions from propane. I think in the article he said that propane was a greenhouse gas. It's not, but there is a lot of CO2 that's created from burning the propane. If you've been, I don't know what the price of propane is down there, but around here, unless you know a good place to get propane, don't go to Home Depot, because it's like, I think it's $20 for an exchange for the tank.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool thing to do. I mean, it's very green. There's all sorts of new things that you discover when you're doing it, and let's not forget. I keep on reminding people all the time that Guinness is just basically unmalted barley added to beer. It's the only difference in the recipe. All the rest are malted barley. That small thing has been the force of a whole country. It's minor technological improvements, things like that, are just things that are discovered by accident. I mean, yeah, that's what's motivating everybody. besides the greenness about it.
And as is alluded to in the article, even if you don't go for the environmental side of things, it saves you money. I mean, you were talking about the coils, the black hose on your roof. You're using that to save money. I mean, it's cheaper for you to have this, the sun do the work for you as opposed to your utility company.
Yeah, if you think about how, and everybody's kind of living in the present, but if you had to prognosticate 10 years ago that Budweiser wouldn't be an American company, that big hoppy beers were going to all of a sudden become the rage, that everybody, the amount of business I'm getting right now as a homebrew store owner, there's so many good beers that are being made out there. I think we are on a very steep slope right now as far as beer and inventions of beer and drinking beer and microbreweries in beer and homebrew in beer. I would say if anybody had to prognosticate 10 years from now, I would say that there will be lots of these solar breweries that are going around for home brewers. It just is going to be the cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of the people, when they see me out in front of my store or they read the article or anything, everybody is just like, that is the coolest thing that's going right now. I think that there'll be brew on premises, on roofs or places. I think that a lot of the restaurants that are bring your own beer will start doing bring your own homebrew, because homebrew club meetings just aren't often enough for most people because of the lag time between brewing it and tasting it and the amount that people want to learn about this stuff. It's the market is very rapidly evolving right now.
And with all the experimentation, if someone reads the article or looks at your video, they may not go all the way, but they may take a certain technique like the roasting of the hops or the roasting of the grain with a lens or something like that. They may go part of the way and use that to add to their process and come out with a hybrid sort of.
Sure. It's when I first started, that's the exact way I went, and I was doing it in the wintertime last year, and I was just roasting grains in my store through the big picture windows in the front. And the smell from the roasting of the grains, it was almost like popcorn in a movie theater. It made everybody, God, I got to make some beer real quickly. This is smelling really good. It's a fun thing to do. It's really neat.
Well, and that's another factor.
There was a lot of people that wanted, solar toasted grains in their beer for whatever beer they were making. It adds a great flavor.
And that's another factor is, we're being homebrew geeks. We like to play with gear. We like to play with equipment. I mean, if we didn't, we'd just go down to the store and buy a 6-pack. So part of the fun of it is coming up with new toys and tools and gadgets to do things that you hadn't done before. So it all fits in.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and I'm the people out there that want to try it. Be prepared to elevate yourself to wizard status real quickly, because that's when people see it being done. That's exactly what they think.
Do you have to have the hat?
No, not really. It's just kids love it, and everybody. I would think in the northern climates, this technology, like I talked about on my roof, I have a 5,000 square foot building that I have to heat in the wintertime. Because when I got flooded, I had to replace the floors. And when I replaced the floors, I put radiant flooring, which is just the floor's concrete has PEX tubing in the inside, which makes the floor in the place a thermal mass, like a big radiator. Mm-hmm. You can only pump through like 130 degree water at the most, or else the concrete will crack. But once it gets warm, it stays warm. And it's not like forced air, which only heats the surface, and when you open the doors, all the heat comes out. The heat stays in the store, and it's just like a big flywheel that keeps the heat around. The technology for this and everything will help heat buildings, hot water. I think that the invention of the shower was probably the thing that keeps everybody from killing each other. It's a nice, soothing relaxation thing, keeps people clean, free of disease, and this will help heat hot water. This will help for the people in the third world countries that have used all of their wood that's around and need heat, and it takes them hours to go gather wood. This will help them cook their food, boil their water, and take showers, and it will bring up everything to more respectable levels throughout the world. It's using the sun is a great idea. I'm surprised it's taken so long to even start implementing these technologies.
And it's free.
And it's free. It's just a matter of like somebody saying, "Let's do this," and then when they're doing it, they say, "Hey, this isn't even work. This is fun," you know. And that's the best way of doing it. It's just like beer. That's when people are making beer. That's the same headspace that they're in.
Well, Joe, this has been fun, and I have a feeling that we have sent many a home brewer to their local recycling facility or town dump looking for big screen TVs.
Right. To take you, what you're going to need in your car at all the times, because you'll be driving around, is there's frames around these. There's two lenses in the inside. The lens that you want is not the darker one. It's the lighter one. So if you see them alongside the road, and people put them out. In fact, I think on Wednesday here in Trenton, they have the electronics recycling thing where you take them all down to the Sovereign Bank Arena, all your computers and TV sets.
Mm-hmm. And
if you go to one of those things, it's a bonanza. You can pick up hundreds of them because they're just throwing them away.
Yeah.
They're of no use to anybody. And that would be, if you want to cash in on the big ones, that's where you go with the electronic TV recycling, because they'll pick them up for free and they'll put them all somewhere, and you just go there. There's a lot more stuff that people throw away. You just have to know what you're looking for.
And then look at it and say, I can brew with that.
Right. Everything, this country is so wealthy, and they throw away so much stuff that in other countries, like, they just see, when they're driving by, they just see dollar signs on stuff on the curb, which in this country, when people throw away, they just see like, oh, thank God somebody took it away, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe, I appreciate it.
It's another part of environmentalism that people frown upon, but they're recycling from stuff on the curb is exactly the way that we want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife got mad at me because we took some computer equipment to the recycling facility recently, and I came back with some stuff. So,
yeah, you can call it white trash environmentalism. You can call them whatever you want. But the bottom line is, if you had to go out and buy a Fresnel lens, because pretty soon the only reason why they made them was for those rear projection TV sets. Those things are very expensive to make.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to cost. People are throwing them out right now for free. When people start making them, they're not going to be $100 each or $50 each. They're going to be like $600 each, and that will put the price way beyond any homebrewer stuff. So right now, because of flat screens and high definition TVs, the old ones have become obsolete, and they're out there.
Well, thanks for your time, Joe. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thank you, James.
Well, thanks again to Joe Bair of Princeton Homebrew in Trenton, New Jersey. I'll post a link to the story and the video featuring Joe's solar brewing process. It's very cool stuff. And if you need me, I'll be at the junkyard looking for big old TVs. I got to think that there's a way that I can play with that. It just looks like so much fun. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our 2010 Brewers Logbooks are now in the house and leaving out the door. So get yours while you can. We've also got our new Reinheitsgebot is a 4-letter word shirts on our shop as well, and they're going out the door too. Check out our homebrewing DVDs. Introduction to Extract Homebrewing, Stepping into All-Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. We've got combo deals on our site to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one of those at a time. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com, and if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at the basicbrewingshop.com. And if you are a shop who wants to sell our DVDs, let me know. We'll fix you up. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Canon EOS Rebel T1i 15.1 megapixel CMOS digital SLR camera with 3-inch LCD. Body only. And, by the way, there's a lot of camera stuff this week. Going to be some cool Christmas pictures being taken. And Everlast Women's Pro Style Training Gloves. Pink, 12 ounce. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we appreciate your support. And don't forget, there are also associate links to the American Homebrewers Association and Brew Your Own magazine as well on our site. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson, our buddy in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.